We have discovered a problem.
We've got a problem. We've got a big problem, actually.
We have a very, very large problem.
This is our 1990 Jeep Wrangler YJ. It's our project Jeep.
That's right. And the last time working on this, we discovered that the front axle, the Dana 30, is incredibly bent. Had a pretty bad bend in it.
Yesterday, I drove 400 miles round trip and I picked up a replacement Dana 30, and today we're gonna swap it out.
But first, we've got to get the new axle prepped. First thing we've got to do is start stripping this axle. We're not going to keep the brake components on this because our previous axle, the bent one, has brand new brake components. So we're going to strip all this off, get the axles out of here, and then we can start putting our new stuff back together. Yeah, this thing still has the original retainers on it. That's got our rotors out.
Oh no, we gotta take it back. It's got spider webs.
Don't be afraid of spiders.
Today we're using professional tools.
We are using something.
It says professional tools.
We're semi-professional. We got our 36 millimeter. Now let's pull the axle stud, or the axle nut out. There's 3 bolts that hold the hub flange on, and they're 13 millimeter, so let's break those out of here. And surprisingly, even though this has a little bit of surface rust, there isn't much holding these in. These universal joints on this are much smaller than what were on our Jeep.
Wonder if this was an 87, 88, 89. I don't know.
I wonder if our Dana 30 wasn't original to the Jeep. There's some food for thought.
You need a bigger hammer.
Need a bigger purse. See if anybody gets that reference.
Bam.
The things you can get away with when you're not saving parts. Yeah, look how small that universal joint is.
Yeah, maybe that was on a... I don't know.
Ours are significantly bigger. Even the short side. We've got this side disassembled. Now let's move on to the other.
Caliper out.
Another caliper down. We're going to loosen up these rotor clips so we can get a screwdriver behind them. Now we're just going to work these out of here. And I still think this is super cool that this actually has these. You know you're putting in a low mileage axle when the rotors have never been replaced. We're going to pull 3 bolts out of the hub, just like we did on the other side. Take the axle nut off, get this hub out, then we can pull the half shaft. And we've got our second 36 millimeter axle nut on this side.
Did it crack loose?
This one did.
That's funny.
Another half shaft out. Little gear oil everywhere. Even for a project of this size where we're swapping out an entire axle, you don't need some big fancy shop. We're just here in the garage, and we've got plenty of space to do this. Next up, we're going to pull the CAD unit, take the differential cover off, and pull the carrier out. Alright, we've got our bucket in place to catch our fluids. We've got 4 bolts on our CAD unit. We're going to take those off. And I want to know, maybe you guys can tell me, if somebody knows, leave it in the comment. When did they switch to the different CAD unit that has the switch on it versus on the firewall? We've been trying to figure that out, and I don't really know. Tappy tappy.
What you got there?
The engagement coupler for that center axle for the CAD disconnect.
Intermediate shaft out. Yummy.
I really don't want to take all this steering linkage off just to get it out of the way so we can get this differential cover out, but maybe we'll just take off the bolt for the steering stabilizer. All these 1/2-inch bolts in the differential cover have to come out. We're going to zip these out of here, knock our cover loose that's clearly been removed before, and dump the fluid out. And wouldn't you know it, this one's a 307, just like the one we removed. See what's inside. We're going to get the 4 bolts out from the caps on our carrier bearings, and when we take these caps and the bolts out, we're going to make sure that we keep these directional and we keep them organized. You can mark these with a punch if you have one available, but we're just working organized today, even though it looks like chaos. 1, a 2, a 3, a 4.
And we're just gonna leave the bolts right in their places.
Yes.
Keep the orientation right.
To remove the carrier, we're going to simply place our crowbar or a pry bar behind one of these bolts and just pry off the case so it pulls it out. Just like that.
Wow, that comes out easy. Whoa. Easy.
Teeth all look good. I'd say it's going back in. We've got our air zippy. We're going to clean up all the gasket surfaces so we can put on a new bead and get a good seal. Now, we've got to remove some old axle seals. And actually, just one. The driver's side axle seal sits right in here, and we're going to remove that so we can replace it with a new one. But the passenger one sits down where the cat axle is. Since we're switching to a one-piece, we're going to go ahead and put in a seal that doesn't necessarily belong here, but it's going to fit here. And that new seal is going to live right here. And to remove our axle seal from the driver's side, we're just going to take a pry bar, put it in the axle tube, and get it on the top of the axle seal.
Bam.
Next up, we're going to be putting in some new axle seals. And to help with that, we have a Dana 30 and a Dana 44 axle seal installation tool. I'll be sure to put affiliate links in the description below for all the products that we've used in today's video, like these axle seals. And full disclosure, we do earn from qualified purchases. So we've got two axle seals that we're going to be putting in. The driver's side seal is pretty easy to come by, and you can go down to any part store and they'll have it in stock and can look it up by the part number. That's our axle seal that's going to go on our driver's side. Now the passenger side, since there is no groove for it to sit in, we had to do some homework. We trolled the internet, looked on some of the forum pages, and found out there's a couple options that people have been using. But this national seal is the correct size for our axle tube housing and the axle shaft itself. We'll make sure that we put links to all this stuff in the description below as well. I've got my new seal for the driver's side. I'm going to place the seal in the axle tube and set up the installer tool.
Seal going in. Tool going in.
We're going to set the collar up on the edge of the new seal and drive our nut to tighten it all down. The more you tighten it, it spreads apart and it does it off the base of the other side of the axle.
All right, let's see how good this thing works.
We're going to tighten down this nut until it gets our seal set into place. It's important to get this squared up on the axle seal. That way it drives it in there and keeps it flush. And you don't ruin the seal installing it. We've got this thing tightened down nice and tight. I can tell that seal's sitting on the edge of that lip. Let's take the tool out and see how good of a job it did. That's got it seated all the way in there. That's perfect. Now for the passenger side. We don't have the lip to seat it down against, so we're just going to drive it in about the same distance that we did this one. We've got our flat seal for the passenger side. Let's set this one into place and use our seal installer tool to drive it in. We're just doing the same thing, just using the crescent wrench to get that seated down into there. Now let's take it out, flip it over, and put it the rest of the way in. That's got the axle seal started in there nicely. Now our installer tool, we're going to take and flip it over to the small side, so that will fit inside of the axle tube. Run the nut back down so we can tighten it back up. This definitely beats smacking this thing with a hammer and a piece of wood.
All right, so that's the passenger side. Let's look at the driver's side. Looks very similar.
I'm happy with that. I think we're going to leave it right there. Now we need to get our axles put back in this axle housing. But first, we're going to put a little bit of grease on the axle seals, then put the differential back in. We'll slide our axles in, make sure everything fits, and then put our cover back on. Now, as a critical part of the CAD delete, we have a single piece axle for the driver's side instead of the two piece. Without that CAD unit in there, it won't function with the two different pieces, and now that we've removed it, it's necessary to have the single axle. You can pick up a single axle out of an XJ, or you can just buy a new one online, and that's what we did. Now we need to get our carrier put back in. We've got our races on the correct side that they came out of. Just drops down into place. We're just going to put a piece of wood on top of the race to tap it back in. Now that's in there far enough that we can put our caps back on, and it'll suck the carrier back down to where it needs to be. Carrier number 1. And we've just got these same position that they came out. We're going to do the same thing on this side. Just getting those started. Now we can start to tighten them down. Now we're going to torque our caps to 45 foot-pounds. And this is where we discovered the trouble with our first axle. Let's see if this one slides right in. Oh, it's engaged in the splines. Now that is exactly how it's supposed to go in. Now let's get the surface cleaned up for the differential cover, and then we can put our CAD delete plate on. This has got this axle prepped as far as we can get it. We're going to get the Jeep pulled back in here and get the old axle out from it. And we're going to put the hubs on and roll the new axle under the Jeep. All right, it's the next morning in the garage. I'm running solo today. Senior had to go off to work. We've got the DIY project Jeep here, and we have a lot to do. We've got our new axle prepped up and ready to go. So we need to get this thing up in the air and get the old one out. Let's get after it. The first step of the day, we're going to get the wheels off of the front of this Jeep, and we're going to start taking the brake components off. The brake components on this are pretty new, so we're going to swap those over. Let's get our spacers out of there. Get the calipers pulled off of here. That's one thing. You never want to let these hang on just the brake hose. Those little S-hooks, those things come in handy. Now that we have the rotor off, we're going to take our 36mm axle nut stud back out. And the last part to get our hub off is just these bolts that have a 13mm head. There's only 3 bolts that hold these on. And once these come off, our hub comes right out, and we can move on to the next side. I am so excited to get this axle out of here. I feel like we need a win. Today, we really need a win. We've only got a few more days to get ready for the off-road games, and I still have a huge punch-out list to do. I'm hoping that we get everything done on that list, because either way, this Jeep's going with us. We've come too far not to be ready. All 3 bolts are out. Hub comes right out, and we're going to reuse this hub, so we're going to save this for the next axle. I'm going to jump over to the passenger side and do the same, and then I'll come back over here, and I'm going to show you what else we need to do to get this front axle out in one piece. And next up, you can see that nasty looking bolt needs to come off of our pitman arm assembly, and we need to take that track bar off. And that'll be all that we have to remove for our steering linkage. This thing has definitely played in the dirt some of its time, because everything is coated with grease and dirt. I guess that beats rust, though. All right. We're going to pop that out of there. Now I guess we get to figure out how stubborn this thing wants to be without destroying the radiator. Oh yeah. For our track bar, it's a 5/8 on the front and an 11/16 on the back. Alright, that's got our steering components out of there. Next, we got to start dropping leaf springs and shocks. Let me show you how we're going to do that. Alright, we're going to take our bottom shock bolt out. That's got the passenger side out. Let's go do the same thing to the driver's side. And we have the same situation going on over here, except it looks like somebody actually put the bolt in correctly. So I'm not trying to fight it off the other side of that spring. It's the simple things, but I don't understand why people make their lives harder. Put things in backwards. So after we get this shock out of here, the last things that we really have to do to get this entire axle out is to take out our leaf spring bolts, and we need to take out the U-joint on our front differential. Once that U-joint's out, we can drop our springs out, and this whole axle is going to slide right out of here like butter. Bit better, at least. We just have 4 bolts that are on our yoke carrier here, and someone has used copious amounts of grease on this universal joint. I don't think this will be too big of an issue considering how much grease is on here, but you do kind of want to be careful. So if yours aren't caked in a total layer of muck, it might be a good idea to wrap them in some tape. And just insert that right in between there. And that comes off on that slip shaft. And that will stay there nicely until we get our new axle put back in. Let me show you what we're going to be looking at to take our leaf spring out. On the back hanger, it's 7/8 nut, 13/16 bolt, and that's going to drop out that whole back section. And on the front, we've got new bushings. So we're going to go ahead and take the whole shackle assembly out and put new bushings in there as well. Otherwise, you could just take out the bottom bolt, and that'll have this whole side ready to go. We've got our jacks set up underneath the axle. Take some of the tension off of there, and we're going to put a jack stand under there as well after we get this set up and move to the other side. I do love the impact tools. This is where, when you have the jack set up underneath this axle, that doesn't drop out on you and do anything crazy. Let's jump over to the front. All right, we got the same situation. 3/4 nut, 3/4 bolt. All right. One side out, let's put our jack stand under there and move on to the other side. And just like that, that's got everything unbolted from our front axle. Let's drop it down and slide it out of here. That's how it's supposed to work, at least. I'm pretty happy about this. Our old axle's out of there. We've got our new axle ready to go in. We need to switch over to leaf springs and a couple other small things. We're gonna get that swapped over onto this new one and get this new axle in. Finally, we'll be able to take this thing for a drive and it won't try to do bad things to you. Me and Jeeps. All right, back from a little lunch. Let's get the other leaf spring off of this axle, get it swapped out. Then we can start putting things together, get them back in. Let's get back after it. There's 4 nuts holding both of these U-joints on. We don't need both of these spring packs, but in order to move this thing around a little easier, we are gonna take them both off. This is the spring that we're gonna save. We're gonna need these plates. Now to put the new one in, I'm just gonna slide the new one right under there, but I'm gonna put the bushings and the bolts back in the back hangers of the springs, so we can just slide it right up onto it. Oh. We're gonna loosely thread the nut back on the back side so we don't lose it. Got some new bushings that we're greasing up. My plan for getting this axle back into place is pretty simple. Hopefully it works. I'm gonna lift up 1/2 of the axle at a time, and then I'm just gonna take the leaf spring, put it underneath here, and get the bolts connected, and we'll bolt it down after we get the axle sitting on top of the leaf springs. Alrighty, up she goes. I don't know how well this idea is really gonna work out. Oh, I think it might. Got both the bolts back in on that. Slip the jack down and go do it again. Let's get this wedged back into place. All right, we've got our bolts in for the hanger. We're gonna put our nuts on these so we know where they are, we don't lose them. Then we're gonna get our U-bolts out and get our leaf springs secured to the axle. Let's go find our U-bolts. Now the first thing that we need to do to get our axle sitting on these springs properly is locate them with the indent pin. That pin has a receiver on the bottom of the axle, right where it sits on that spring. So we're gonna lower the axle down and get it centered on that spring, then do the same with the other side. That side's sitting on the pin. Let's go do the same thing with the other. And we've got very much the same thing going on this side. We're gonna get that pin lined up the best that we can. Well, and there she goes. This axle is sitting on the pins. Let's drop our U-bolts in. I think this is absolutely hilarious, just to really show you how bent these old U-bolts are. You can cleanly fit another one underneath of it. That is absolutely crazy. Our new U-bolts come in 2 different sizes. The bigger one goes on the inside, and the smaller one goes on the outside towards the wheel. We're gonna put our plates on, and then I'll show you how we're gonna torque those down. Got some new U-bolts that are not bent. We're gonna torque them down, don't worry. I told you we were gonna torque them down, and I promise we are. These say anywhere from 65 to 80 foot-pounds of torque. So we're gonna go with 75. Oh yeah. I don't know if it's wrong to go a cross pattern on U-bolts, but that's just how I've always done it, so I'm gonna keep doing it. Now, we're gonna go do the same thing on the other side, and I'll show you how we put our hubs back on. All right, now it is time to get our front drive shaft put back into place. I'll be honest, I don't remember what the torque spec is on these, but we're gonna use some thread locker. Just make sure they're good and tight. I mean, you can't torque everything, right? Front drive shaft is back into place. Next up, we gotta get our shocks bolted back in. It's crazy to me how much travel this thing really has, even for just being leaf springs. All right, that side's nice and tight. Well, universal joint still feels pretty good. I think we're gonna leave this axle in. Dust plate for our rotor goes behind our hub. Put some bolts back in here. Some good old internet has told us that our torque spec on these hub bolts is 75 foot-pounds. Let's get the axle nut put back on here. I think it's torqued on to 175 foot-pounds, so we're gonna run it in with our impact and then go from there. Let's get our torque wrench on here and see what that puts us at. We have our big boy torque wrench, our 3/4 from Tekton. And make sure you put your cotter pins back in. Leads to a highly dangerous situation. And when we got this, one side didn't even have the axle nut, so always leave it better than you found it. Let's get our brakes put back on, and we can get our wheel spacers put back on too. Pop our rotor on here. And we're in the desert, so we use brown anti-seize. I don't know if that's really a thing or not, but it sounded good. What color anti-seize do you guys use? Drop me a comment and let me know. Our caliper back on here. Our wheel spacers. Curious to see how well these actually hold up. Never ran wheel spacers. Always just bought the right wheels. But who knows? We're gonna see if that's gonna be a problem or not here directly at the off-road games. And these get torqued down to 100 foot-pounds, just like we do the wheels. All right, so for the 2 bolts that we have to put in, we have one for our panhard bar and one for our steering linkage. Let's get these put in. We still have some vacuum lines to take care of, but that will have to come in the morning. All right, we've got 2 bolts left to go. We've got to get that panhard bar in, and we've got to get our steering connected back up. And it looks like we got some help.
I have arrived.
Let's get these bolts put back in, because I'm tired. All right, let's get this bolt in here. Let's give it a little love. It did get dark. The day is about over. We're on the final step of getting our suspension tightened down before we can go on our test drive. Our wiring I can't finish up until the morning because we're still waiting on a new harness. But our front shackles have to be tightened to 75 foot-pounds, so that's what we're going with. 75. Our back spring eyes are all that's left to torque down. Those got to go to 90 foot-pounds, and then we are going for a test drive.
As promised, to finish up our CAD delete, we've got a couple of items left to finish. What do we got to finish up?
We've got to take out the vacuum lines, and we've got to replace the vacuum switch. And we're going to be putting in just a 12-volt switch into the transfer case to trigger our 4x4 light.
Right, that's going to put the light on the dash so that we know when we're in 4-wheel drive.
So we're taking our vacuum lines off the transfer case, and now we have to get our vacuum switch out of here. This is the old vacuum switch that we got out of there, and as you can see, it's got a lot of schmutz on it, but a 27mm did fit perfectly to get it out. This is our new switch we're going to replace it with, and as you can see, it's electronic. We'll be sure to put a link for this in the video description below.
In the side of the transferred case, the electric switch is in there.
So this is the old vacuum hose setup for the CAD unit, and now that we've got all that out, we're going to disconnect the vacuum wire from the old 4x4 light switch. And now, we'll let all of this, should let all of this come up out of here. And that's what was plugged in. Old sensor's out. Let's wire in a new one. We've got our new wiring harness wired up. We've got our connector with just 2 pieces of black wire. One we're going to terminate to the ground, and the other is going to go into the wiring harness where the existing connector was. And we've got some extra loom, so we're going to keep it clean and use this. Now, we got to feed this to our new switch on the transfer case. We have the connector plugged into the transfer case. Now, let's go deal with the wires up above.
Shout out to cable tie link and grip lock ties. These things are awesome for working on Jeeps.
We're going to reuse the original ground point and ground one of our wires that come off that switch. And our second wire is just going to connect right back into the factory harness where our switch was before. And that's got that connected for the moment of truth. Let's find out if the light works.
Nice.
Perfect. So the vacuum line that came off of our throttle body just went through a T, and we have enough line left that we're going to connect it back to where it was, and this will run the vacuum advance for our distributor. The vacuum line's all hooked up. Let's go take this for a test drive.
All right, this is the maiden voyage with the new axle. What do you think?
It's not trying to kill us currently.
Yeah, the steering was so squirrely before. Holy moly, was
Yeah,
the...
it's definitely not squirrely. It's got a little bounce in it just because of what this is. The lift on it's not helping that.
All right, the real test is going to be, let's see at speed what this thing does. Going 45.
Yeah, 45. That's pretty nice.
It's pretty smooth.
No, the alignment's off just a touch, but honestly, it's really good.
I would call that axle swap a success. What about you?
This is a win all day long.
The off-road games are in less than 2 weeks. We've got a giant punch-out list to do. That's going to be our next video. When we're done with that video, we'll put a link to it right there. Thanks for watching.
Can I get that crescent wrench?
Sure.
I don't think it's going to fit.
All right, how about that?
All right.